Hi there, I'm Shaun Bindley and this is Meet the Ministers. My guest on the program this evening is the Deputy Premier of Queensland, the member for Mount Cootha, Andrew Fraser. Andrew, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Growing up in Proserpine, did you have your eye on a career in politics from an early age?
I think growing up in a small town means that you're always interested in the community as opposed to in a city environment where you sort of have to actively involve yourself in the community. In a small town you have to actively decide not to involve yourself. So for me, politics is actually the natural extension of the way I grew up. But having said that, I'm not from a political family. Neither of my parents are involved in politics. But for me, I suppose I always took an interest in what was going on around, and that seems to me that that ultimately a life in public service is one that's worth living.
You're an academic gun at school, from what I've been able to uncover. Was it a normal progression, a natural progression to head straight into politics?
Look, I think that the issue for me was I could have gone and studied medicine or engineering.
And I think you thought about medicine once.
I did for a while, but in the end, I suppose I ended up choosing law almost by default, and that is because I decided I didn't want to be a doctor and I didn't quite understand what engineers did. And, you know, you're making this decision in a country town when it's September, my birthday's September, I wasn't even 17, and you've got to tick a box allegedly about what you're going to do for the rest of your life. So I picked the law degree and commerce degree at Griffith, and it was, I think, the best sort of guess I've ever made. I thoroughly enjoyed studying at Griffith, and ultimately it opened up a whole range of pathways, and it's why we're sitting here today.
A law commerce degree, the amount of work you must have been putting in at that age must have set you up well for what was going to be expected of you. I dare say what you're doing these days, you're working long hours.
Yeah, in hindsight. But I think the good thing about a law degree is not that many people actually go on and practice law who study law now. Yeah. There's a lot of people who use it as a more generalist degree, and it's a great discipline, it's a great skill to have, especially as ultimately, being a legislator, having a law degree is obviously important in being able to go through all of those processes and give you some insight into the sort of advice and briefs that you're going to receive. But for me, it was important that at Griffith they teach the degrees together, not as sort of two silos, and the crossover that goes into public policy issues, I think, and administration issues is where the importance of the degree was.
Mm-hmm. There's that sort of two streams of going into politics, it seems. I've spoken to plenty of people on the show who've done their law degrees and their business degrees and headed into politics at a fairly early age, and there's others who, by dint of their situation or their desire to help out in their community, have found themselves in politics. Is there a better or worse, you think, in that situation? Is there a better way to do it? I
think it's good when there's people from different walks of life and different backgrounds and at different stages of their career. I don't think the Parliament should be full of 27-year-old blokes like I was when I was elected, any more than I think it should be full of 80-year-old women. I think if you get the spread of genders, of ages, of backgrounds, people at an early stage of life, people who've done other things, it's important to have a Parliament that represents, I think, the broader community. For me, I was interested in politics, but I always thought it would be something that happened much later in life, and certainly I've got a Lonely Planet Guide to Rome on the bookshelf at home, which is the testament to that. We just got married, we were 25, 26, deciding what to do, whether you go to London for a couple of years like everyone did, go to Sydney, Melbourne, make a different decision. Teresa had been working at the RBH for quite some time, and we were deciding what to do. We travelled a bit, but we decided that this seemed like a big decision. Having kids seemed like something that grown-ups did. So we decided that we would go to Rome and stay there for a couple of weeks and decide what to happen next. As fate turned out, within a couple of weeks, I was running for pre-selection and Therese was pregnant, and
Rome.
Neither of us had been to Rome. You've got to be careful making plans in life.
You've got to be careful what you ask for as well, because sometimes life will take over for you.
It certainly did.
How'd you meet your wife, Therese?
I met her at university, actually.
Yeah.
So I met through a common friend at university, and the rest, as they say, is history.
And two young kids. Is it part of your life that you find easy, balancing your family life? I know that you've been very specific about the need and the desire to balance your family life. Is that as easy as you'd like it to be?
No, it's dreadfully hard. Yeah. And look, The first thing I'd say is I don't know anyone who's actually got perfect work-life balance, and everyone I know is busy, and it doesn't matter what your job is, and mine's just a job that's particularly busy. But there's plenty of people out there who struggle every day with work-life balance, whether you're a working mum or a working father. And to be honest, there is everything I love about this job. It's a rare privilege, but the one thing that does get at you, and it gets at you constantly and especially after a while, is the sacrifices that go to your family, that go to family time, and ultimately that's the one thing that I think is going to see more and more people being 10 and 12-year parliamentarians and less 30-year parliamentarians, because ultimately the job has changed over the last generation, and I'm not complaining about that. You go into it with eyes wide open and you've got to be prepared to put in the effort, but in the end you can only ask so much of a family unit.
What's the kids' perception of what it is that you do and how that fits into their lives?
Well, they've only really just begun to work out that my job might be a little bit different than others. I mean, Angus was born 5 months after I was elected, and Eleanor was born 5 months before I went into the cabinet. So for them, it's kind of a bit normal, as far as this can ever be described as normal, in the sense, they've not known anything else.
Yeah.
But, they understand that it's a little bit different, and, there are things that are different about it. But I think at an early age, they're 5 and 7, they probably get more interest at school. I think it's harder for teenagers when, teenagers can be a bit more cruel. And certainly colleagues who've got teenagers say that it's a bigger challenge being in public life when, teenagers can say, your dad's a moron or whatever like that. At the moment, they just kind of think it's a bit interesting and weird, but that's the way it goes.
They have that perception of seeing Daddy on the TV or hearing him on the radio every day?
Well, they just think it's quite normal. So it's not normal, but they think it is. And so the good thing about that is they don't really think twice about it. They don't pay attention to it like perhaps kids would otherwise do it.
There's a bit going on in your life. New position, election certainly not too far in the future. Has that ramped up the pressure on you personally? Are you able to take it in your stride?
Look, I think the one thing about this job is there's no instruction manual for it. There's no pre-training, and it's really a bit like being thrown in the deep end with a couple of bricks tied around your ankles and work out whether you can swim or not.
So there's no collection of old Labor hardheads who take you aside?
Look, I don't think anything actually prepares you for what it's like when you're in the middle. And when it's the pen in your hand, or you're in the arena, or you're doing the work, it's ultimately something where you learn as you go, and life experiences and the experiences that you've had to that point can assist in all of that. But it really is an inductive learning process, and you find out things about yourselves, about how you react to pressure. I'm generally a very calm person, and I generally approach things in a sort of rational and thoughtful way. And obviously I've found that trying to apply that discipline to the weight of whatever's swirling around and whatever pressure there is a way of actually sorting through it. And you've just got to keep your eye on the finishing line. You've got to know why you're there and what you're trying to get done. Because if you immerse yourself in the swirls of the day, then you might expend a whole lot of energy, but you mightn't move an inch.
All right. You're watching Meet the Ministers. My guest on the program is Andrew Fraser, and we'll be back after the break.